This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Sports are back, and so is the Moonlight Graham Show. Welcome to Season 9 of the podcast. Hello, I am your host, Tim Flattery, and our Moonlighter for today is one of the greatest athletes ever to come out of the state of Iowa, a 6'3", 220-pound left-handed pitcher from Dallas Center Grimes High School. His name is Tony Watson, and you guys probably remember Tony Watson. He only gave up one run his entire senior year of high school at DC-G. After high school, Tony went on to the University of Nebraska, where he was on some of the best baseball teams in Husker history. You probably remember those teams because they had Alex Gordon, Joba Chamberlin, Brian Dunsing. So many big leaguers were on those teams. They almost won the entire College World Series, but came up just short against Arizona State. After a successful career at the University of Nebraska, Tony was drafted in the 9th round of the Major League Baseball draft by the Pittsburgh Pirates and made his Major League debut back in 2011. He is currently in his 10th Major League season. Tony currently plays for the San Francisco Giants. He spent his entire career in the National League. He, of course, spent most of his career with Pittsburgh, had a brief stop in LA, played in a World Series for the LA Dodgers, and is now with the San Francisco Giants. His career stats in the major leagues, listen to this: 39 wins, 25 losses, a career ERA of 2.81. He has made 608 career major league appearances. He actually led the National League in appearances back in 2014. That same year, he was an all-star for the National League. And in this conversation with Tony, I caught up with Tony while he was in quarantine right before the season kicked off. And we talked about how so few Iowans have been all-stars. And actually, in this interview, I make a mistake. I thought there was only like 8 guys that were born in the state of Iowa that went on to become Major League All-Stars. I had previously read an article that had bad information in it. And after the interview, I went back and looked up the stats and found out that the article was wrong and I was wrong. So here is the actual list of guys that were born in the state of Iowa that went on to become Major League All-Stars. First of all, of course, you had the heater from Van Meter, Bob Feller. He was an 8-time All-Star. You also had Joel Hanrahan, who was in some of those Pittsburgh Pirate bullpens with Tony Watson from Norwalk. He was a 2-time All-Star. Dennis Menke, of course, from Bancroft St. John's, was a 2-time All-Star. And then you had Gene Baker, Mike Boddicker, Mace Brown, Joe Horner, Dwayne Josephson, Bobby Knoop, Tim Laudner, Bob Lee, John Lieber, Michael Waka, and Tony Watson all appeared in one Major League All-Star game for a grand total of 14 guys have been born in the state of Iowa and gone on to become Major League Baseball All-Stars. Of course, since Tony Watson also spent his entire career in the National League, he's hit a little bit. He's got up to the plate 10 times, had 7 career at-bats, and he's 1 for 7. And we do talk about that one career hit in the interview here with Tony, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. Special thanks and special shout-out to a couple of guys who helped us set up this episode. Scotty Crava, who is a former Iowa State kicker, who's a Moonlighter. We've had him here on the podcast. Grew up with Tony Watson, went to high school at Dallas Center Grimes with Tony, and also JD Schulten, who's a friend of the pod. Those two guys are friends of Tony Watson and helped set up this interview. So special thanks to those guys. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy season 9 of the podcast. We're excited to be bringing it back. And as always, folks, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, subscribe to the Moonlight Graham Show wherever it is that you listen to your podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher. Subscribe to the Moonlight Graham Show, and you know the drill. Leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow the show on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We love hearing from you guys each and every week. So enjoy today's episode with Moonlighter, San Francisco Giant left-handed pitcher Tony Watson. Tony Watson, I guess we should start off right now, being that it's such a unique time for baseball players. We're talking at the start of July. Normally, the season is well underway at this point. But as you and I were texting before this, you had mentioned to me that you're kind of in quarantine right now. So what are you doing? What's your quarantine like right now, and how are you keeping the body in shape as a 35-year-old, entering the baseball season here?
Yeah, 35, you had to drop it. But I came out to San Francisco about 2 days ago, and then we have protocols in place through MLB and the teams that we have to, take the test, take the antibody test, and then receive a negative before we are allowed to use team facilities. So basically, last night I took the test. I'm in quarantine. I'm about 16 hours in right now. And it should take about anywhere between 48 and 72 hours is what they're saying. So hopefully it's on the shorter end. Yeah, so I'm just in my hotel room and brought the TRX so I can get some body weight stuff going. But for the most part, it's just streaming some HBO, some Netflix, and I went to Target and stocked up on some groceries as much as I could, and just trying to make the most of it.
Do you do anything pitching wise in your room? Like I'm kind of a weirdo, and I've thrown bullpens in my backyard, but I've also thrown bullpens like in hotel rooms. I set all the pillows up like on a chair, and I would throw into the pillows. Or like I've seen Marcus Stroman doing, just going through his motion to remind his body, how to do. Are you doing any of that, or is it just all TRX bands?
No, there is muscle memory stuff involved. I'm not going to set up the mattress and throw into the mattress.
Okay.
I'm sure some guys have done it. Guys have definitely talked about it. I'm, like you said, 35, so I'm trying to save the bullets right now. So these extra couple days off have kind of benefited me. But, it's as far as like the dry runs, and you can just, bounce around stuff. You find little directional things in your room, like a rug or a couch, and just try to keep your direction and your levers going and your balance points, and just to keep your delivery in sync, because it is all muscle memory based. So one day off in the middle of the season, you take one day off and you go back the next day, and it's, it almost feels like you're naked out there. So 2 or 3 days off, it's going to be a couple of days to get back in the grind, because for the whole 3 months that we've been off, we've been still throwing and getting our stuff in and getting our bullpens in. So we're, guys are ready to go. Guys have been throwing live VPs, guys have worked innings up and down. So just taking this 2 to 3, 4 days, whatever it might be, of nothing, it's going to be another whole ramp up period this weekend that we got to get back into.
Tony, you went to Dallas Center Grimes High School, and famously your senior season of high school, I believe you gave up 1 run. You had an ERA about as low as you can get. I think it was 0.1. So you must have given up 1 run that year. Do you remember the run you gave up your senior year of high school?
I don't remember it, but one of our old teachers, I think I was on a podcast with your buddy Scott Crava, and they were talking about it, and I didn't remember. And one of our old teachers was actually listening to the podcast and shot me a text. And he was the assistant baseball coach at the time, Brian Sams, and he lives out in Nebraska now. He's coaching and teaching still, but he shot me a text and he remembered it was versus Carlisle, I guess. He didn't have all the names of the things, but he knew the situation. I think there was he said there was a little blooper and a kid scored from second. So 1 run, it was a long time ago, obviously, but it was. I don't really know how I did that. I just guess I blacked out for the 2003 season and just made it happen.
How much fun was it pitching in high school when you're just dominating everybody?
Those are some of the most fun memories of my baseball career. My cousin's a senior at Urbandale this year, and they got to, their season was in limbo. The Iowa baseball season was in limbo, the high school season, and they just started back up here a couple of weeks ago, and I was so excited for them because senior year of baseball, those are some of your best memories. You have the only priority is baseball. Some guys are working jobs, getting ready for college, but because it is a summer sport in Iowa and not a spring sport, school's done. So there's nothing else going on. And the small town baseball, there's just something a little bit more nostalgic to it in Iowa. It's all night games. It's always nice weather, depending on the rain, but It seems like everybody's always out. So, those are some of my best memories. And being a small town, K through 12, you grow up with the same kids and keep in touch with them. So it's, definitely fun memories to look back on and share with those guys.
What were you like as a high school hitter? Obviously, we know you were a good pitcher, but when you got to Nebraska, you obviously didn't hit. You focused on pitching. And I've noticed in your pro career here, even though you've been in the bigs for a while now, you've only got 7 at-bats, 6 of which ended on strikeouts, 1 of which had a base hit. So what were you like as a high school hitter?
Definitely long, slow pull. I was just waiting to run into one. I didn't. Honestly, I wasn't that great of a hitter.
Looking to yank stuff down the line.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just hook pulling everything. Front side was completely gone. I would love to have video of my old footage. Just thinking about like some of those perfect game things that we used to do, and they'd make you hit. You'd go over there to pitch, but they'd make you hit too. And it was like, okay, what am I doing? Like, this is a waste of time. Definitely now they're pitcher only positions, and I was definitely a PO. But I enjoyed playing in the field too. But I didn't really stack up with the good hitters around the state and around the country by any means.
Do you remember your only hit in the major leagues?
Of course, yeah. Carlos Torres, New York, the Mets. I had actually pitched the inning prior. We were on the road, so it would have been the bottom half, and it was a close game at that point. And we were with the Pirates then, and we had actually batted around and opened up the game. We ran out of bench guys. I think somehow we ran out of bench guys in a game like that, and top of the 9th inning. And instead of using one of our starting pitchers, I kind of talked my way into, hey, just let me hit. We don't have a bench guy. You're bringing in another reliever anyway. And so I think there were 2 outs and guys on base. Russ Martin was on second base. And I remember I just ran in and long, slow pull. I was late, just kind of filleted it, caressed it into left field, and thinking, oh man, I got a hit here, but I also have a stake. I got an RBI on the line here. And then because we had scored so many, Nick Leva, the third base coach at the time, he held up Russ.
Oh, come on.
I remember I got that was my reaction at first base. And Rick Sofield, our first base coach at the time, was just dying laughing because I was more concerned about the RBI than my first career hit. But yeah, always wish I would have had that stake, but I knew Russ was running hard and he was trying to get that run scored for me. But definitely remember that. And then I remember coming around second, and I was going in, and everybody was giving me a hard time in the dugout. David Wright was playing third, and he was asking for tips, joking around on the way in. He's like, hey, if you could teach me how to just stay on that backdoor cutter like that, I'd be having about and I jokingly said, well, how about we just trade paychecks, and then we'll be able to talk a little bit more. But, it was definitely a good memory, one that I'll always hold on to for sure.
What do you think?
A lot of strikeouts in there, though.
Yeah, one for 7 with 6 strikeouts, but you must have got a couple of bunts down there in between. So you had a couple productive at bats in the story.
Yeah, I can knock down a sac bunt. I mean, we bunt in spring training, so it's all about the barrel control on that. But definitely the punch outs was, those are tough. But first big league AB was Phillies versus Roy Halladay, and I saw that sinker, and I was like, oh man, there it is. That's not that bad. And then all of a sudden it got to the grass, and it just completely disappeared. And I said, oh, okay, this is why everybody struggles against this guy. But It was some devastating stuff for sure.
What do you think about pitchers not being able to hit at least for the next couple of years and maybe forever? With the universal DH seeming like an inevitability at this point.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to follow. The National League has played a different game than the American League, based solely off that pitcher having to hit somewhere in that lineup. Most of the time at the 8-9 hole, depending on roster construction and lineup construction or who's pitching, what your bench is like, et cetera. But also just, how teams are built with their benches. If we have a DH now, I don't know that we're going to see like the big poppy, where it's just, or Travis Hafner or the guys that are just DH only.
Like Nelson Cruz with the Twins right now. He's 40.
Yeah.
And still just dropping bombs.
Exactly. He just drops tanks for sure.
Yeah.
but I don't know that I could see teams, utilizing that spot as more of a platoon, or, look at somebody like the Dodgers that have like just so much talent on their roster. And now all of a sudden they have one more extra spot that they can insert one of those hitters. And then as the game goes on, managers have tough decisions. If it's a pitcher's duel and you got the two horses out there that night, it's going to be a low scoring game. And at some point, somebody's going to have to make a decision on, do I let this guy ride, or do I pull my lefty off the bench and try to pop one in the gap or pop one in the seats and then turn it over to the bullpen and try to close it out. And now that manager's not going to have that decision anymore. So it's going to be interesting, but I think, for 2020, I think everything's pretty much off the table. We're just trying to make this thing happen as best we can. And so it'll be an interesting dry run for sure.
So I do want to talk about your Nebraska career. So after DC-G, you go on to play for the Huskers, who had a really good thing going right then. And you come in your freshman year. So you redshirted in 2004, but then your freshman year, one of the best Nebraska teams in history. You guys had, I think, 6 big leaguers on that 2005 team. If I'm counting it right, you had Adam Moore, Brian Dunsing, Zach Kroenke, Alex Gordon, yourself, and then Joba Chamberlin. So what was that team like in that 2005 team? Because, of course, the CWS has played in Omaha, so everybody remembers that last time that Nebraska was there, especially with Gordon being one of the top picks in the draft that year. That was such a great team.
Yeah, tremendous. And you touched on it. I mean, they had a nice thing going. And so my junior, or I guess it would have been my sophomore and junior year of high school, they had made the College World Series back-to-back years and had built some momentum. We're in the Big 12. They were playing all those Texas schools going down south. So the recruiting was really picking up, and we had a lot of really talented players on that team. And then, like you just mentioned, everything just kind of blossomed in 2005. Alex Gordon was obviously, I think he won every award that you can win in college and basically did everything. He was a do-it-all. He raked, basically. I think he was the second pick. So, and then Joba, he transferred in, and I don't think anybody knew what he was going to do, but I mean, that was incredible, his 2 years there. And then we had a bunch of pieces. I mean, you mentioned the guys that played in the major leagues, but there were numerous guys that got drafted.
Like Simakaitis and Johnny Dorn were really good on that team as well.
Those guys were huge for the success that we had. I mean, Joe Simakaitis was basically our leader, Daniel Bruce, and they had played on the CWS teams before, so they were upperclassmen at the time. So the leadership was so strong. There were no cliques. It was all one unit, and we all had one common goal, and that was, I mean, honestly, some of the best memories and team bonding that I've ever had. And, we had Brett Jensen, Jeff Christie, Adam Moore. I mean, we had 2 catchers that were drafted. It was just nuts, the influx of talent that we had in one college baseball team. And we fell a little bit short against Arizona State in the CWS, but yeah, really, really solid team, solid group of guys that, we still keep in touch with. And we had Brett Jensen, our common friend.
I wanted to mention Jensen. Jensen, I played with Jensen for the Rochester Honkers in the Northwoods League, and I played against him in high school. And so from my neck of the woods in like north central, northwest Iowa, Brett Jensen was the best player. Him and Brad Nelson out of Algona-Garrigan were the best players that I had seen growing up. And then when he went to Iowa Central for 1 year, transferred to Nebraska, and instantly was really good at Nebraska. And he was like a very unique guy, long and loose, had a really good slider, but had a good sinking fastball as well. He's probably, for me, the best guy I ever played with that didn't make it. And I'm always shocked that a guy like him didn't make it. What do you remember about Brett Jensen?
I think you hit it on the head. I mean, he was so funky, but he was tall. I mean, 6'7".
Yeah.
And his brother played basketball at CU. I mean, Eagle Grove legend up there. Didn't they win the state tournament, I think? And,
they should have won it back-to-back years, but they choked it away one year and then won it the next.
Yeah, and so he came in, and I knew about him from Eagle Grove and then Iowa Central. And then I, just Iowa baseball circle is pretty small. So we hit it off right when we got to school. And Yeah, he's tall, but he's a freak athlete. I mean, he moves so well, and he came at guys from this like low 3/4 arm slot almost, sidearm, and it was nasty. And they put him in the closer role, and he was the closer on that 2005 team that we were talking about earlier. And I mean, he took off. He had guts. Nothing fazed him. I mean, he was out there and he was throwing late innings, and he was dominating. And then he got drafted. He was in the Tigers. And played against him a few times, and then he had some arm problems. But yeah, I think definitely had everything that mentally, physically, he had it all. And it's just too bad that it didn't work out. But one of the better. I mean, I think you can attest to this. One of the better guys in baseball and that's around. I mean, he's got a great sense of humor and always keeping it loose. So really, really happy that got to call him a teammate for a couple of years.
Yeah, I agree. Brett Johnson's such a great guy, and it always pains me that he never made it to the show. Is there a guy that you played with or saw that you thought, man, I can't believe that guy never made it to the big leagues? For me, it's Brett Jensen, but is it someone else for you?
Yeah, my buddy was asking me this when we were in lockdown. Like best minor league seasons that you were like, whoa, how did that guy not make it? And there's a handful of guys that just like took off one year, and you were like, holy cow, how's this not? Like I had a buddy, Jim Nagrich. He raked in the Carolina League in 2008, and he never got a shot. It's just there's so many factors that play into it, and sometimes it's just you just got to be right man, right spot. There might be an injury. There might be. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, look at your show, Moonlight Graham Show. It's like,
oh yeah,
it goes for. It's been like that forever. Somebody might be gone for a pregnancy or something. Somebody's wife is pregnant. They need a guy for 2 days, and all of a sudden that guy's raking. It's like, well, how are we going to send that guy down? We got to keep him up, and then he never goes back down. And it's got to be. You either got to be very, very talented, which a lot of guys are, or for most guys, it's just luck of the draw, and you got to find your way and take full advantage of your chance and put yourself in the best position to succeed. So I can't pinpoint one guy, but there's definitely guys. When I was in the minor leagues, I was charting in the stands as a starter, and in between starts, we would sit in the stands with the radar gun. And now they have all the tech and stuff, so they don't have to do that and sit and sweat in the Carolina League. But yeah, it's you're watching the other games and you're like, holy cow, this guy's legit. Like he can really play. And you kind of keep an eye on him, and for some reason it just never works out. But it's there's a lot of guys that you could probably say that for sure.
Do you remember your debut?
Oh yeah. 2011, another Iowan, Joel Hanrahan, was in the bullpen with me.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Norwalk guy.
Yeah, Norwalk guy. And I remember he said, don't look up. Everybody says don't look up when the bullpen gate opens because there's another deck on top of the deck that you're used to. I mean, you think of like Principal Park or these AAA stadiums. Most of them don't have two decks. They just have one deck. And then you go into the bigger stadiums, Philly, LA, New York, there's, 3-4 decks. And it's like, holy, wow, we're really building up here. And Hanny was like, hey, don't look up whenever you run in. So the first night I was up, we were down big. And so I started, the phone rang, and it's the ninth inning, and I was going to pitch it and started warming up. Well, then all of a sudden we made a rally, and I'm not pitching the close game. I'm up there to eat some innings when it's, kind of out of control. And so as we started scoring some runs, I had the nerves going and I'm warming up for this. And then all of a sudden we start scoring some runs, and the phone rings. Hey, it's getting closer. Hey, all right, we tied it. Okay, sit Watson down. Hanrahan's, the closer. He's in the game. I was like, all right. So I think we ended up winning that game. And then the next night, it was a close situation. It was Jose Veras was pitching. He got in some trouble. We were playing the Diamondbacks, and I was sitting down there not expecting. The night before, it was a big lead when the phone rang and my name got called. So it was a close game, and the phone rang, and I wasn't thinking anything of it, but I didn't know how the big league bullpen was ran or anything like that. So I was still on the ready, but Yuki Rojas, our bullpen catcher, was like, Waddy, get going. You might have the next hitter. And I was like, oh, shit. All right, here we go. And yeah, I'm like, okay. I'm like looking out there, and he's telling me the situation. And I'm like, okay, well, all right, let me think about this. So it's a tie. It's a 1-run game, and I might have the next hitter. So, and I went in, I think it was first and second, 1 out. And I looking back, I start laughing, thinking of the videos of those pitches, but just threw these absolute concrete mix sliders that were just like this. I mean, the backup slider is the best pitch in baseball. You know, the hitter's waiting for it to break, and it's just sitting there circling, and you just take. I mean, it's like a wiffle ball. He takes the biggest hack ever, and he misses it, and he walks back to the dugout.
And you act like you know what you're doing. You act like you meant to do it.
100%, and that's exactly what happened. I think I struck out Juan Miranda and Chris Young. And I walked back to the dugout, and I was like, man, and I'm not a strikeout pitcher. I never have been. And everybody's, you know, high-fiving. Oh, that was awesome. And I'm just thinking, like, that's not even who I am. I'm not even a strikeout pitcher. I'm not even a slider pitcher. And I'm just throwing concrete mixers. But the thing that really settled me down was we had some injuries. We had terrible luck with the catching position, injury-wise. And Dusty Brown, who had caught me for 3 months in AAA, he had got called up that day too, and so he was catching. So it was like, all right, that helped ease the nerves, ease the situation, and just went out there, and it was just like we were pitching in Indianapolis, but we were in Pittsburgh. And honestly, at the time, we didn't have a great club, and there weren't very many fans in the stands anyway, so it wasn't a huge nerve moment or anything like that. But your debut is definitely one that you never forget, and if you don't have jitters, something's probably wrong with you.
Oh, no kidding. I still get nervous for men's league games around here. At least my body does. But, you know, you mentioned it earlier, and it reminded me of my time in the bullpen. You know, the night before, you might say, hey, Watson, get up. You might be coming in here. Then the game changes, and then you end up not going in, but you might have already gotten loose, you know, and we used to call that getting dry humped, you know, was the term. It's probably not a real PC term. How much more difficult is it for you at 35 years old to get dry humped like that than it was back when you were like 25 years old and coming up?
Yeah, I mean, getting dry hump's tough anytime. So it's 30. That's why I'm not throwing balls into the mattress.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Because I've been dry humped before in my career for about the last 8 years. So it's just part of the gig. Hanny was really good about it. Jose Veras was really good. I had some goods. Jason Grilly was up there that year. Chris Reesup. It was just some solid guys that had been around on different teams and had been through the ups and downs of a year of a bullpen usage. And so just kind of Juan Cruz was another one. He'd been a veteran. I mean, I got lucky. I had some solid guys that were veterans or young veterans that had done it for a while, so they had good routines, so I could just kind of watch and see what they did in between outings. And you know, a few things just really kicked in and stuck with me, and I created a routine and just kind of stuck with it and just tried to, you know, the biggest thing they all said is just try to stay consistent with it. I mean, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs in a major league bullpen, and there's going to be days where you feel like absolute garbage, but you still got to figure out a way to do it. It might be a division game, or it might be, you know, a pennant race, or, you know, you got to pitch against the Cardinals. Like, you got to be ready for all three. We're chasing these guys, or, you know, we need at least 2 out of 3 here. And you look at the schedule, and you might have a break in the calendar where there's a different game. You know, they all matter, but in the division ones, those are the ones that are huge. And you just got to figure out a way to keep your body going. Trust the training staff, trust the strength and performance staff. But yeah, it's never easy to swallow the get up, sit down, and then 2 innings later you're doing the same thing. Young guys, you know, there's that nervous energy going, and
right.
It's something that I talk to them about now as being a veteran guy is monitor your throws. I mean, Yuki Rojas was huge. He was the bullpen coach for the Red Sox in the early 2000s, so he had a lot of experience, and he would literally count every pitch that we would throw as we were warming up, and then he would count the 8 throws that you get when you go into the game, and then he would send you a spreadsheet at the end, and it would say, here's how many throws you did throughout the course of the season. And it's eye-opening. It really is. It's you know, you start looking at the worst that I ever saw was a guy with, it's just the nervous energy. These young guys, they start throwing and they're getting ready for the game, and then you ready for the next hitter. Well, then the situation, there's numbers, there's science, and everything that goes into a decision now. And that guy just keeps throwing. It's like you need to hold the ball, stop, and just stop throwing.
That was totally me.
I
mean, I'd be doing that in the bullpen for like 3 innings. It would turn into like me working on things in the bullpen. Like while I'm getting loose, I'm sitting here trying to work on my slider or something. Just because I had all that nervous energy that you described.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. You don't want to be. Well, the worst I ever saw was a guy threw 55 pitches before he ever threw one pitch in the game. So. I mean, he was like 75 pitches for the night, and then the biggest thing is you're trying to keep yourself available for tomorrow, and then the next day if possible. And 75 pitches, he's essentially shut down for 2 days,
right,
at least. And to your point about working on stuff, I mean, there's guys that do that too, or like, man, my breaking ball's not there today, or my fastball command's off, and it's like, whatever happens down in the bullpen, just make sure you get your routine in. And then as soon as the gate opens, for whatever reason, it's just we're creatures of habit. And as soon as that gate opens, no matter what you're feeling or warming up, you get out there and it's like everything just clicks in. I don't know what it is, but so that's another thing that I try to tell guys is like, stop throwing your breaking ball. Like you're going to blow your elbow out, and
right.
You threw 15 sliders down there, and then you go into the game and you throw one backup slider to Juan Miranda and he swings and misses, and you've done your job and that's your outing, but you threw 30 pitches in the bullpen, so you're taxed for tomorrow. And it's just you're trying to eliminate all those little battles that sneak up throughout the course of the year. But there are some times where let me throw an extra one, like that probably is not going to play at the major league level here, so I probably should make sure that this thing's got a little better chance of this.
It's funny how no matter what bullpen you're throwing in, the game mound is always different. And the game mound is always different than the bullpen mound, no matter where you're at. And you're right, like everything just clicks a little bit different when you're on the game mound, and it's a totally different feel for your body.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was actually talking about this in spring training with our manager, Gabe Kepler. Just asking them, where are you? How do you feel about your, where you are in your progression of spring training, et cetera. It's a normal conversation to have. I think we were in DT talking about it. And it's like you can throw bullpens all day. I mean, especially at this point in your career, I mean, you can get up there and there's no adrenaline. You could put a catcher on one side of the plate and you can drill a fastball. You know what cues there are in your mechanics that you need to drill this pitch. And if you drill this pitch over and over, your mechanics are locked in and you can throw every other pitch. I mean, that's just how it is. But there's something about getting a hitter in the box, and in spring training we do live BPs, which is no umpire, or their teams are doing umpires now, but usually no umpire. They're turtles in. Some hitters want to know what's coming, some don't. Some don't even swing. They're just there to track. But there's just something about, I was telling Cap, our manager, I said, there's just something about seeing that hitter in the box where the energy and the adrenaline just ticks up one more notch. And every guy needs that at least once or twice before he even sees the game, because there's just different extension. Your body just goes a little bit further than it has been in the bullpens in the off season or in the quarantine. Your body's, you're doing this, but then if you see a hitter in the box, I mean, your juices get going, you compete a little bit more. And then all of a sudden, your lat gets a little tight because you've stretched it out a little more. Your legs are your glutes are going a little more. It's just like, you need that soreness to, it's just a progression to push through. But yeah, it's interesting to see all the little nuances that happen throughout the course of a year to get a pitcher's body ready for a 162 game season.
So Tony, in your career, you've been pretty fortunate. Like, you've played in the state tournament in high school. You've played in the College World Series in college. You've played in the World Series, but you've also been an all-star. And back in 2014, you were an all-star, and you were actually only one of 5 Iowans, Iowa-born guys ever to make the all-star team. Those guys are Mike Boddicker, Bob Feller, John Lieber. We mentioned Joel Hanrahan earlier, and then yourself. That 2014 All-Star game, I think you pitched in the game, and do I have this right? You only threw 1 pitch in the 2014 All-Star game?
Yeah, I did. First of all, that's a great list of is that all pitchers too?
That's all pitchers, man.
All-stars? Yeah. So that's a great list. I mean, I didn't know that there was only 5. That's incredible. But yeah, one pitch, I got dry humped. We'll go back to the dry hump. I got dry humped in an all-star game, so that was awesome. They try to slot it out. Mike Matheny was our manager. Forever grateful that, he was in our division. I was pitching a lot against the Cardinals. We were always in a division race with them. It was back. They changed the rules now, but the manager used to have pick of, the reserves and the bullpen guys. And I basically pitched against the Cardinals every time we faced them and had great numbers against them. So he fortunately picked me for a role in that bullpen. But yeah, they slotted out, they're walking around. Hey, we think you're going to throw, the starters are going to throw this, he's going to throw 2 innings. You might need to clean up. He's got a pitch count. The teams don't want these guys throwing too many pitches, et cetera. And so I was like, all right, I was slotted in to split the 6th inning with, I think it was Tyler Clippard. We were going to split the 6th inning. It's like, all right, that's great. So we get going in the 6th inning, and then I think it was a double play ball or something. So sit down. And then I think I threw the next inning, and I had to warm up with Chapman. They had to get Chapman. They had to get the closers in. So I was warming up next to Aroldis Chapman, who was just over there throwing 105. And it was like, oh, God. And they were like, all right, you're going to have one. They called down, and they're like, he's got this one hitter, his Jose Abreu from the White Sox. And in the All-Star game, after the first, after the regulars go out, it's pretty much becomes home run derby. They're trying to all just launch. And so you're trying to, as a pitcher, it's like, well, I'm not just going to groove a fastball in there. And Miguel Montero was catching with the Diamondbacks at the time, and he said, Bobby, let's throw a slider first pitch. And I was like, a slider? Like, that's my 4th best pitch. I'm not going to throw a slider. And he's like, no, trust me, throw a slider. Threw a slider, not a great slider. And Jose Abreu was trying to, hit it to St. Paul. It was in Minneapolis. It was like a mile-high fly ball to left field, and that was it. They had to bring Chapman in, so I threw one pitch, the most efficient outing in All-Star game history, probably. So,
attaboy.
Yeah, it was definitely a memory that I'll always have, but definitely heard about the one pitch, and when I got back to the clubhouse, and I also heard more that it was a slider and not a fastball. So it's pretty soft, but I got the out. So
are guys giving you a hard time for throwing a slider first pitch and not challenging them?
100%. And it's like, that's smart pitching, bad hitting. I mean, if I'm going to throw a groove of fastball in there, I'm probably walking out of there with one pitch and one earned run on my, I got an infinity ERA in the All-Star game, but luckily Miguel Montero is savvy and said, hey, let me see a slider here. And it was a little mixer. So basically the story of my career is just concrete mixed sliders.
Sliders. You don't have a lot of good things to say about your slider here.
No, yeah, honestly, it's been a great pitch for me, but for whatever reason, in big moments of my career, I've really relied on it. So I'm actually just now looking back, and as we're talking here, I'm thinking and laughing to myself about all the monumental moments of my career that are unique to me. Is my slider has a lot of a background for these.
So I saw online that at one point, at least, your walk-up song was "Sweet Emotion" by Aerosmith. Is that still your walk-up?
No, it's not. It was. So in Pittsburgh, we didn't have walkouts unless you were closing. And
oh, really?
I took over the closer. Yeah, we didn't. It was now I think everybody pretty much has them. I just haven't picked one. I used "Sweet Emotion" as I took over the closer role from Mark Melanson after we traded him in 2016, and I just kind of threw it in there. I said, yeah, let's do "Sweet Emotion." And yeah, Aerosmith is a good song.
It's got a good intro, for sure.
Yeah, it's good. It's nothing, it's not a banger. It's not, we're not bringing down the stadium or anything. I didn't have any flashing lights or, I'm just a left-handed closer running in. But
do you have one now in San Francisco?
I don't know. I don't. And it's usually like by the time you're pitching later in the game, they're doing some 50-50 giveaway
right.
They got the promotions going.
Last call for beer.
Yeah, exactly. As you get into those later innings, and then the closer comes in and they always bust out the scoreboard, and everybody's got these 4D now, and it's like, okay, here we go. But that was for a couple months in 2016.
So before we get to the 5 big questions, which is how we wrap up every episode here, I got to ask about you because last year, Tony, we put together the list of top 100 athletes ever from the state of Iowa. And you came in at number 30 on the list, right between David Johnson, the running back for, I think he just got traded to the Houston Texans, and Fred Hoiberg was in at number 29, and you were number 30. Now, everybody always says pitchers aren't athletes, and Casey Blake, bristled a little bit at the amount of pitchers that we had on our list. But what do you think about pitchers being athletes and your ranking in our top 100?
Well, the ranking is, I feel like I'm pretty high. I don't know. I don't know if I deserve to be that high. Sandwiched between those two guys. Those are two of probably Fred Hoiberg was, what is he, 29th?
He's 29th.
Wow. Tough list.
Well, yeah, we put a lot of time and research into this, Tony. There's a lot of great athletes from the state of Iowa.
Yeah, that's incredible. But yeah, I'm honored, definitely honored to be in the top 30. That's incredible. But I think, Casey Blake, I don't know Casey at all. He had a great career, but
he's higher than you.
He should be. There's definitely the pitcher only now, but I think athletes have changed. Pitchers have definitely changed. Even over the course of the last 5-6 years, with all the advanced technology and biomechanics, and there's some terrible athletes. I've seen some really bad athletes on the pitcher's mound, but they are blessed with a great right or left arm, and they can throw strikes and spin it. But for the most part, all of us have to be, well-rounded athletes now. So I would like to say that I consider myself a well-rounded athlete. I played other sports in high school, and it's, funny talking to like scouting directors now, and they're getting ready for the draft. It's like one of the big things they're looking for is, do they play other sports? Because it's one of the big things there is, they're easily coachable. They have multiple coaches. They don't just have one pitching director. And then, not everybody plays baseball, and not everybody plays basketball, not everybody plays football. So they're, able to get into a team concept and be a good teammate and learn from others and communicate and et cetera, part of everything is being part of the team. And so, yeah, I would say that I would consider myself a well-rounded pitcher athlete.
I appreciate that. You
got to
defend
if I deserve to be in top 30 though.
Well, if you look at it, there's a lot of guys that have made the major leagues. There's a lot of, fat Iowa linemen that have made the NFL. There's not many guys that have made the NBA. So when we looked at it, the guys that have, made the NFL, MLB, or NBA that, played more than 5 years or so, they're going to be pretty high on that list just because there's not many of them. So, Tony, I think you need to be a little bit more proud of your career. There's not many guys that have, you're 35 years old. Well, you're still playing in the bigs, man.
Yeah. You're right.
You have one or two more good years, so you might move ahead of Hoiberg.
There you go. We have to do a revote.
Right.
I think who was number one, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't mind you asking at all. So number one was Bob Feller, another great Iowa pitcher.
Oh, yeah.
Number two was Dan
Absolutely.
Gable, which was a little bit controversial because, of course, we had the Iowa wrestling crowd wanted to kill us because Dan Gable was not number one.
He's a legend. Both of those guys, legends, absolute legends. So.
Right. Yeah.
I think you're not going to make everybody happy in that top 5 for sure.
Yeah, the top 10 is pretty legit. Like, to be in that top 10, you had to win like a major award. You're talking like Kurt Warner, Sean Johnson, Zach Johnson, Bryce Popp, Bob Feller, Dan Gable. That's in another class. And then after that, it's more Nick Collison, Adam Haluska, Tony Watson, Fred Hoiberg, David Johnson, guys in that class. And you're right in the middle of that group.
Yeah, some fantastic athletes, great names. That's awesome. Honored to be a part of that group.
All right. Well, Tony, the way we end every episode here of the Moonlight Graham Show is with the 5 big questions. So the first question that we have is, who's your all-time favorite teammate?
I would say a guy named Jared Hughes He's a right-handed reliever. I played with Uzi since my first year in pro ball. He's the guy that sprints in. He's still playing sprint sinker baller. He sprints into the mound.
Oh, that's me.
Brewers.
That was me.
Yeah, and he's also an epic photo. I mean, this is why he's my favorite, because he's such a down-to-earth guy and great human being, but he keeps it loose. He's got some epic photo day collages throughout he's got this stare going, and but yeah, he's one of my good friends in baseball. Keep in touch with him, but he's a great clubhouse guy, great to have around during the season, and he was my throwing partner for 6 years in Pittsburgh. So we got to know each other real well. It's important to get the right-handed sinker with the left-handed glove. So we match each other well.
How intimate is the relationship with your throwing partner?
Well, you got to find one. It's a tricky thing because you pick it out in spring training, right? So you're trying to pick a guy that you're going to be with through the long haul, and you want a guy that's not going to just be blowing your palm up every day, or a guy that's spinning, like you throwing 15 sliders, working on stuff in the bullpen. I mean, that's not the guy you want. You want a guy that's, let's take it long one day, but let's not go long every day, or, just kind of, feel each other out. And so I think it's incredibly important, and the relationship's got to go on, because there's going to be days where Jared and I would play catch, and it's like, you probably should take a day today. Your stuff just, you got to be honest with them.
Yep.
Your stuff's just not playing today. You say you're good, but it's the instant feedback of a teammate or your throwing partner. And he and I played catch every day for 6 years. So we had a great relationship in that regard.
That's pretty cool. My catch partner at UNI was actually the first episode we ever did on this podcast, just to show you what I think of the catch partners. I think it's one of the closest relationships a man can have with another man.
No doubt. I mean, think of how many times you lick the fingers and throw the ball. I mean, you're sharing each other's germs every throw.
You're right about like the righty lefty thing too, because their cutters and sliders break perfectly into your glove, and if it's the other way around, it's going to be just a rough year.
Yeah, 100%. And you don't want that. You do not want that. You want to be comfortable out there working on your craft. It's your 15, 20 minutes of daily prep to getting ready, and the last thing you want to be worried about is if a bowling ball sinker is just going to be destroying your thumb.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be going out that night throwing and thinking about your thumb that's, throbbing, still got a heartbeat in it while you're on the mound in the game. So, yeah, Jared, perfect throwing partner, great human being, great teammate.
Tony, what's one memory that you have from your career, and I know it's still going, but when you close your eyes at night and you think back of everything that you've accomplished in baseball that reminds you of everything that you love about the game?
I think just like pitching in the playoffs, standing on the line in the playoffs when your name's announced, and everybody, the playoffs is a whole different, it's turned up a whole different notch, and everybody's in their seats, 20 minutes before the anthem even starts, and there's intros and the electricity, and when you get your name called and you're on that line with everybody else, it's a special moment. I think opening day probably qualifies right there with it too, getting your name called at an opening day and running out and being on the line. But standing on the line for those anthems, playoffs, opening day, it's just, I would say playoffs even more. I mean, when I was on the line in the World Series, it's like you're standing there thinking, looking around, knowing what families in the stands that were with you through it all. And that's the pinnacle. I mean, the World Series national anthem lining up at Dodger Stadium. I mean, that was like, whoa, here we go. This is pretty cool. And, it's like you're a kid in the backyard and you're dreaming about those. And then, you're pinching yourself. You're like, I'm, standing here on the line with my teammates. We're going to go try to win a World Series. So this is pretty special moment for sure.
Is there any one pitch or one game that still nags at you?
Yeah, I try not to do this because it's interesting how the ones that, especially when you're closing or throwing the eighth inning, you're setting up and your team's, relying on you and you're doing well. And then all of a sudden you're like, why did I throw that pitch? Or, but there was a couple in 2017 where you're just like, what is going on? And it's just, there was a game in 2016. I was pitching against the Cardinals. Matt Carpenter, this was the pitch. I remember it. Matt Carpenter came off the bench. He was struggling. I'd faced Matt Carpenter all through my career. Got him. We had 2 outs. We were winning by 1. I got him 0-2 really quick. I mean, he was scuffling, and I think Matheny just pulled him off the bench to give him a free look. And it was like, all right. And I let my guard down for 1 pitch, and I tried to sneak a slide step fastball by him, 0-2. And it just ran middle, and I just completely sped his bat up. And I remember thinking, why in the world did I do the slide step? I mean, it was like I just handed him a gift, and he just, flipped his hands and turned the barrel, and he just barreled it, home run, tie game. Wheels completely fell off. I mean, I think Johnny Peralta hit a double, Yachty Molina hit a homer. I mean, and I got out of there with like 4 runs, and I was 1 pitch away. And I always think to myself, I'm like, man. But it's like those are lessons that you got to go through, and I don't try not to make that mistake again. I have, but it's interesting how little things like that come up throughout the course of the season in your career.
So let's wipe those bad memories clean, and let's go. The next question here is, what's your favorite mound to be on?
The favorite mound? That's a tricky question because there's so many variables and things, like certain backstops are closer on top of you. There's certain center fields that you turn around and look and you're like, man, there's no way that's 400 feet out there. Like, it looks so close. So you're like, all right, well, I got to be on. But I really enjoy pitching at Wrigley. That's an old school stadium. So they're on top of you. Everything's closer. There's some that, the dugout feels a mile away. The stands feel a mile away. The backdrop, the visual feels like the catcher's way further than 60 feet, 6 inches away. So, and then there's some that just have terrible ground screws that don't keep the mound, by the time you're pitching at the end of the game. I mean, there's a hole and everybody knows that you got to be ready for those ones. But, yeah, I would say Chicago. I've only pitched at Yankee Stadium, the new Yankee Stadium, 1 time, but that mound was the most, it was spotless, pitched late in the game. And I don't know what they use, but everybody talks about it too. And it's just this clay that just sticks and it's perfect. And, but you wouldn't expect anything other than that at the Yankee Stadium. So, right. That's one of the better mounds too.
So final question here, Tony, what's the best advice you've ever received?
I would say, don't be afraid to fail, learn from your failures, but, let it all hang out there. Don't be timid in anything that you do. If you're worried about, how you're going to look or how you're going to do, it's probably not going to end up very well anyway. So just go, trust everything that you've been taught, trust your process that you've nailed down, and that you're going to go out there and whatever it is, it doesn't have to be sports. It could be, work, it could be life, but just go out there and, let it go, let it be free and do it. And if you fail, learn from it. But just don't be afraid to go out there and fail.
I love that. Spoken like a true reliever, right?
Yeah, because that happens.
Yeah.
It's going to be a roller coaster of emotions if you're worried about how you're looking out there or how the outcome's going to come. It's one night you could be the hero, and the next night you're walking off the mound wondering what the hell happened. So yeah, it's definitely some good life experiences going on in the Major League bullpens.
Well, Tony, thank you so much for joining us here on the Moonlight Graham Show. I'm really glad that we were able to set this up. I guess a special thanks to Scotty Crava and then JD Schulten as well that helped us put this together. So good luck this season. We're going to be cheering for you here on the Moonlight Graham Show, and hopefully we have a season we can be rooting you on.
Yeah, I'm really honored to be on. Thanks for having me. I'm glad that you mentioned JD and Scott setting this up. So it's great to be on with you. Great to chat some baseball and some Iowa memories. And, thanks for having me on.
Hey guys, thanks once again to listening to today's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And even though I do most of the interviews here on the podcast, there is a ton of work that happens behind the scenes that you guys don't see that make each episode possible. So I got to give a shout out to the Moonlight Graham Show team. First of all, Brian Sandvig, our producer, Brian does all of the post-production work, and in real life, he's not just a podcast producer, he's also a real estate agent. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home down in the Kansas or Missouri areas, give Brian Sandvig a call. Next guy on that list is Brendan Gargano. Brendan does all of our design and artwork here on the podcast. He's one of the most talented artists I've ever met, and I love all of his work. If you need any help on the design side with logos or anything like that, give Brendan Gargano a call. The next guy on that list is Andy Flattery, my older brother. Andy, of course, has done some of the interviews here on the podcast. He also is a certified financial planner. He owns a business called Simple Wealth Planning. If you need any help in that area, check Andy Flattery out. And then, of course, the trusty co-host Tom Griffin and my younger brother Neil Flattery. Those guys are just busy being husbands, being fathers, they're family men, but also they do a ton of work here on the show. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the Moonlight Graham Show.